I received one morning a letter, written in pale ink on glassy blue-lined notepaper, and bearing the postmark of a little Nebraska village. This communication, worn and rubbed, and looking as though it had been carried for some days in a coat pocket that was none too clean, was from my Uncle Howard, and informed me that his wife had left a small legacy by a bachelor relative who had recently died, and that it was necessary for her to go to Boston and attend to the service of the settling of the estate. He requested me to meet her at the station and render her whatever services might be necessary. On examining the date indicated as that of her arrival, I found it no later than tomorrow. He had characteristically delayed writing until, had I been away from home for a day, I must have missed the good woman altogether. The name of my Aunt Georgina called up not alone her own figure, at once pathetic and grotesque, but opened before my feet a gulf of recollection so wide and deep that as the letter dropped from my hand I felt suddenly a stranger to all the present conditions of my existence, wholly at ease, and out of place amid the familiar surroundings of my study. I became, in short, the gangling farm boy my aunt had known, scourged with chilblains and bashfulness. My hands cracked and sore from the corn husking. I felt the knuckles of my thumb tentatively, as though they were raw again. I sat again before her parlor organ, fumbling the scales with my stiff red hands, while she, besides me, made canvas mittens. The next morning, after preparing my landlady somewhat, I set out for the station. When the train arrived, I had some difficulty in finding my aunt. She was the last of the passengers to alight, and it was not until I got her into her carriage that she seemed really to recognize me. She had come all the way in a day coach. Her linen duster had become black with soot during the journey. When we arrived at the boarding house, the landlady put her to bed at once, and I did not see her again until the next morning. Whatever shock Mrs. Springer experienced at my aunt's appearance she considerately concealed. As for myself, I saw my aunt's misshapen figure with a feeling of awe and respect, with which we behold explorers who have left their ears and fingers north of Franz Joseph Land, or their health somewhere along the upper Congo. My Aunt Georgina had been a music teacher at the Boston Conservatory, somewhere back in the later 60s. One summer, while visiting in the little village among the Green Mountains, where her ancestors had dwelt for generations, she kindled a callow fancy of the most idle and shiftless of all the village lads, and had conceived herself for this Howard Carpenter, one of those extravagant passions which a handsome country boy of 21 sometimes inspires in an angular speculated woman of 30. When she returned to her duties in Boston, Howard had followed her, and the upshot of this inexplicable infatuation was that she eloped with him, eluding the reproaches of her family and the criticisms of her friends by going with him to the Nebraska frontier. I owe to this woman most of the good that ever came in my way in boyhood, and had a reverential affection on her. During these years when I was writing herd for my uncle and my aunt, after cooking 3 meals, the first of which was ready at 6 o'clock in the morning, and putting the 6 children to bed, would often stand until midnight at her ironing board, with me at the kitchen table beside her, hearing me recite Latin declensions and conjunctions, gently shaking me when my drowsy head sank down over a page of irregular verse. It was her, at the ironing or mending, that I read my first Shakespeare, and her old textbook of mythology was the first that ever came into my empty hands. She taught me my scales and exercises, too, on the little parlor organ which her husband had bought her after 15 years, during which she had not so much as any instrument but an accordion that belonged to one of the Norwegian farmholds. She would sit beside me by the hour, darning and counting, while I struggled with the joyous farmer, but she seldom talked to me about music, and I understood. Once, when I had been doggedly beating out some early passages from an old score Euryanthe I found among her music books, she came up to me, putting her hands over my eyes, gently drawing my head back upon her shoulder, saying tremulously,
"Don't love it so well, Clark, or it may be taken from you. Oh, dear boy, pray that whatever your sacrifice may be, it be not that